What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first summer edition episode of Morning Cuppa Hockey. Alongside Colby, Cohen, I'm Jonny Lazarus. We are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. We are joined today by an NHL Hall of Famer, someone we're very pumped to have on. Colby knows him personally. They are good friends. Colby made it clear that we are not good friends, but hopefully we'll be friends after the interview here. A lot of things are happening, and I want to remind everyone we're recording this on Tuesday at 4:22 p.m. Eastern time. So if things do happen in the next hour or so, you won't be hearing it this week, but maybe next week we'll touch on it. This episode should be out live Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. It'll be on YouTube and it'll be everywhere else. So without further ado, let's bring in the Hall of Famer and let's check in with him and see. Let's start with July 4th, JR, because nobody in this world has more fun than you. And I learned that from getting to be around you, going back all the way to that 2011 playoffs when we met. So what were you guys up to for July 4th? I'm sure you had no fun whatsoever.
Well, my life is all fun. So at some point I got to relax, and we got a lot of relaxation for July 4th, to tell you the truth. And my wife and I and my son and some friends got together, just a little house party, got a little hotel room, enjoyed sitting by the pool, got to relax, did as little as possible. Got a little bit of a fireworks show in, but it was very chill, but still a lot of fun. I love celebrating America as much as I can.
What's the Jeremy Roenick drink of choice at a house party? You doing high noons or just making your own like tequila cocktails or whatever?
It depends on what's on display. Actually I was into the wine that night, so I had a little Cabernet. The next day I was into the margaritas, and I drink pretty much on the weekends. During the week I kind of put it away. So I've lost 25 pounds, 30 pounds. I want to keep it off, and
nice.
Doing the alcohol stuff does not bode well for the diet.
Well, I can attest to the fact that we've had some late nights together in South Korea, venturing around the different country houses, drinking whatever the native drink, whether it was the sake bombs with our shoes off at that little hole in the wall spot in Korea. We were drinking soju, if you remember that. And then we went to the Russia house until the early hours of the morning. And of course, the next morning, JR looks good, smiling, happy. I'm like crippled, can barely walk. I can barely see straight. And JR's like, what's wrong? Well, I tried to keep up with you.
I learned very early, you play hard, you work hard. So, that's what it is. You can never not be ready for work. And I've always been professional like that. But yeah, I got to say, my older age, I'm 54 now, boys. It's definitely toning her down a little bit. And I'm enjoying it, to tell you the truth. Yes.
Well, I'm sure once the announcement was made, I saw the viral video of you getting the call that you were in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but I'm sure there was a good celebration that night. I don't know if you get tired of talking about it. You are now being welcomed into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I mean, obviously you talked about it a little bit here, but how has it settled in now that it's been, a few weeks or so since the call's been made?
Well, I don't think you can ever get tired talking about it. I've waited for so long. And, and sometimes, they say all good things come to those that wait. And it was for sure a big surprise to me, and one that hit me extremely hard. And I was very happy with the way that it that I took it, I think, as it hit me. I mean, I did get emotional. I cried like crazy. I yelled, I screamed, I swore, I did everything possible that you would do to be excited about something. And, there are parts of me that were sad, my dad not being around to be able to see it. So there's a little bit of somberness to it, but for the most part, or for a lot of the part is just total gratitude, being humbled into the biggest, pretty much the biggest honor you can have as an athlete. Right. And, this kind of puts a big stamp on my career, and something that I'm very proud of. And I don't have to listen to people ask me anymore, when are you going to be in the Hall of Fame? And that's probably one of the best things about it. And, I thank all the people who have supported me, because it's literally everywhere I've gone. everywhere I've gone, that was the number one thing that people ask me is, when is this going to happen? When's it going to happen? And I'm like, I don't know. It might happen. It might not. But it did. And I'm very, very thankful and happy and look forward to November. It'll be a great celebration. And thank all the people that have reached out to me and, saying congratulations and giving me all of their thoughts. And it's been a very, very wild 2 weeks of conversations, of media, of friendships, texts, phone calls, everything. It's been, like I said, a lot of gratitude here.
Well, I mean, look, before the announcement, anybody who's followed the game of hockey knows that you're a Hall of Famer. I mean, whether they were going to do it or not, who knows what the reasons could or couldn't have been. And it's not even worth dwelling on them at this point because that phone call came. But it is ridiculous that it took as long as it did. I mean, you look at your career, you look at the points, you just look at how many guys had, 1,300 points and 1,400 penalty minutes, and how many guys were point-a-game players in the playoff and turned it up in the biggest moments. I mean, some of the greatest moments that I got to watch as a young Flyers fan, and I know I told you this the first time I ever met you, I remember the goal against Toronto and all these big moments that you had throughout your career. And I guess maybe when that phone call comes, JR, does some of those memories and some of those things start like rerunning through your head, like your greatest moments as a player? I mean, who made that phone call to you? And sort of like, when you sit back and you take that breath and you're like, damn, like I'm one of the best to ever do something on the planet. I am in the most elite group of elite that there is. Like I can't even begin to fathom that. Like my career was not even close, right?
Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way, to tell you the truth. I think it's, like I said, I'm very humbled and I'm grateful that I am there, because there was part of me that maybe thought that I wasn't going to make it. And yeah, you look at the points, you look at the goals, you look at the penalty minutes, you look at the playoff performance, and especially the clutch performances, right? I'm still in the top 3, in game 7 goals or points, and, top 16 in game winning goals all time. So those are the things that are fun to look back on. But I don't think it's really hit me. I've tried to keep it very kind of, low key, is here with me. And it's not just this is not just me. This is like a Hall of Fame for my family, right? So we all share in this, and we all have a lot that we all take credit for. I mean, obviously me on the ice, my wife raising my kids, being like the amazing supporter. No athlete can't do it without having the support of their family. And, this is a great celebration for all of us. And I think that's been the kind of the way that I'm looking at it. And it'll be interesting to see what November brings. In terms of what kind of speech is going to come out of me, because it's going to be very emotional. There's no question about it. And that goes through my head every day. And that's kind of really the only thing that goes through my head is kind of how I'm going to make it through that speech on November 11th.
Well, you're not gonna have a ghostwriter.
I can attest to the
No
fact
ghostwriter.
that.
Well, I'm kind of in between, just winging it, because usually that's what I do. I just speak from my heart on most everything that I do. Whether I have a cheat sheet and just like topics that I need to hit,
Just like a few index cards.
Or if I just write out just the whole thing. It probably won't be the latter. I think when I speak from my heart, it usually is the best. But with conversations with Tracy and my son, and we'll come to a good idea and plan.
Yeah, well, I can attest to the family unit that is the Roenicks. We've obviously, and you guys have welcomed myself and now my wife, into your family. And whether it was dinner in Chicago, I mean, it has always been really cool to me to see how, Brandy will get on a plane and fly from Germany for the weekend to spend time with you guys. And Brett, I know, is on the West Coast, and it's the same thing. You've got something going on in the East. He's on a plane. And, as I'm raising a family, I have a daughter. I have a son on the way, and I can just only hope that, we're like that one day, because whether it's Tracy, who's like the warmest and the best and is so much fun to hang out with, and she was so good to Alex when they met in Chicago for the first time, just treated her like you treated me the first time we met. that's what I put on social media when you got into the Hall of Fame. I'm like, look, I was never a teammate of JR's on the ice, but off the ice, there's nobody who treats people better. Nobody who's more generous. You'll never picks up every tab, put your wallet away, invites you to the ball game, invites you to the football. There's just nobody like you. And that's been the best part for me. Like, watching you play was amazing, but everything I've got to experience with you has been Hall of Fame level human being. And I think that's why I was so happy when I saw that, because I've played with a couple of guys who are in the Hall of Fame, was teammates with Mark Recchi and a couple of other guys who will get in, but there's no one like you, man. There's nobody who does it like you do it.
Well, I appreciate that, Colby. Obviously, those are kind words. I appreciate it. And the fans were a big part of my career. I always say, if it wasn't for the fan in sports, we would have just been a local men's league team with the arena down the street with a designated beer guy, right? That's pretty much what sports would be. That's what hockey would be. And you got to love what you do, and when you're a part of a team, you got to make sure that you're supporting your team. And I try to do that as much as possible. My team now here, you just mentioned Tracy, like she's Captain Rock, right? So, I just go along and stay humble. And I know that's kind of new for me, because for the longest time, humbleness was not my cup of tea. It was very outspoken. It was very in your face, and sometimes, with a lot of ego. But what you said, that was when I played. Right. That's when I was in a certain situation. You get me in another different situation, and it's just like, how can we help you? Whether it's charity, or whether it's saying thank you to the fans, or just being, helping other people do something that maybe they couldn't do. And that's always been a big part of my life and my career. And that's not going to change. And, the Hall of Fame brings a different entity to your persona. And, you got to act a certain way, once into those halls. And, I intend to, be that guy that's going to represent the Hall of Fame and my family the best way I know possible. And I'm really happy about it. I'm excited about it.
JR, we were kind of debating it before you hopped on here. And when there's obviously a lot of things we can talk about outside the Hall of Fame, but when you do go up there and give your speech, which team do you kind of associate yourself with the most? Because we know you had 2 stints in Arizona, you played in Philadelphia, all these different teams that you were a big part of that were also, I assume, a big part of you.
They all claim you, by the way.
Yeah,
claims you.
We couldn't figure it out. We thought we'd ask you yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Arizona retired my number, but I lived there for 25 years, but I'm really not not going to sit there and say that, Arizona was my team, because I lived there for 25 years, and Arizona never reached out once for me to help them. So, there's no more team there anymore. That team is now in Utah, and probably deservedly so. Philly was a huge part of my career, even though I only played 3 years, and the 4th year was a lockout. I got a very, very quick introduction to Philadelphia sports, and we just matched perfectly. The Flyer fans, how they rooted, how they cheered for their team, their passion was how I played the game on the ice. So we just gelled, and everywhere I go, I still meet Flyer fans, and my reputation and my relationship with Flyer fans are still as strong as possibly can be. Unbelievably so, to tell you the truth. My love for them is huge. But when you have a team like Chicago, who drafted me, they took a chance on me in 1988, especially a high school kid, 155 pounds out of high school. That was just unheard of in the 80s. High school kids were not drafted by the National Hockey League in the first round.
And they took a chance overall, on me. Right?
Yes, 8th overall, exactly, which is crazy. I had Jack Davison and another gentleman who was the East Coast scout. They literally put their jobs on the line and said, if you don't pick Roenick and at 8th, we're quitting. Sean Cody. These guys literally put their career on the line for Chicago to draft me. That means a lot. Playing 8 years in Chicago, having my obviously 250-goal seasons, 100-point seasons. My most affluent years were in Chicago. But I don't think I get to pick what jersey comes. I think the Hall of Fame puts you in a jersey, and I would have to think it would be Chicago because of all those things that I kind of just outlaid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably, having worked in Chicago for a couple of years, that city, they look at you as their own. There's no doubt about that. I mean, doesn't matter where you go, whether it's, hey, I want to go to this restaurant, I'm friends with JR, or you would just text the restaurant for us. Like you have a key to that city as far as I'm concerned. But it is true in Philly. Like it was short in Philly. I was like 10, 11 years old, and this city rallied. I mean, it was big news when you came to Philadelphia. Ed Snyder made sure of it. And man, did this city that I live in, I don't live in the city anymore, but this city, man, they look at you as one of their own. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I would say that in the East Coast, Philly's my team, and the West Coast, Chicago's my team. So I've won in each conference. So that's how I get away with it.
Yeah, I do remember you shedding some tears on NBC when the Blackhawks won the Cup in 2010 too.
It's kind of funny you said that too.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I got a lot of crap by the Flyer fans for doing that. And I said, hey, listen, if the Flyers would have won, you probably would have seen the same reaction because I wanted to win so badly for that city and still, played as hard as I possibly can to win for that city. And I say to people that say that, I say, hey, listen, it's not my fault. I didn't lose. The Flyers lost. The Flyers lost. If they wanted to see me, what kind of reaction I would have gotten if Flyer fans would have won, then Flyers should have won, but they didn't. So, it wasn't my fault that I happened to play for 8 years for the other team that I was, shedded blood, sweat, tears, for too. So,
well, I think both those cities, the reason the fans loved you so much, and I do think, obviously Philly's its own beast when it comes to the fans and the city and everything. But I think both of those fan bases appreciated like the fact that, like you were Showtime, but you also would punch a guy in the face and then you'd score 50 goals and you never took a night off. And like the term we always use now is this guy drags his team into the fight. I don't know if that term was popular in the 90s, JR, but that's what you did. You did that as a goal scorer. I think that's why Philly loved you.
It's like they say, it's either you're a good leader, and if you're not a good leader, you better be a damn good follower. And I just like to be the guy out in front. And if you love the game as much as I love to play the game, you went out there and just did it at top speed. And there's something about scoring a goal. There is something about making assists. There's something about throwing a puck to a fan. And there's something about knocking somebody out with a shoulder check. There's a lot of great things that come along with the game that I really enjoyed. And, I really respected the people pay a lot of money to go watch, to come to an arena, to leave their home after a busy day, spend their hard-earned money to buy a very expensive ticket to come watch us play. And I tried to give them the best entertainment that I could, both on and off the ice. And I think more athletes should be more in tune and more aware of the sacrifices that fans give to watch and to be fans of a team, and to give that gratitude, not only just with your actions or your talking or, but by your play and your play night in and night out.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you did that as a broadcaster, and I think that's why people loved you on TV and why they identified with you as a broadcaster, because you brought the passion.
I don't know about that, but I did bring that. But I think they liked me too because I messed up so many words and I made fun of myself all over.
You went hard though.
Yeah, I did. No.
You didn't. Everybody sugarcoats everything on TV. Very few guys are willing to actually say what they think, and like. Fans say what they think. Even if they're wrong, they yell and scream and say what they think. And like you brought that to the panel when you were on it.
Well, I think fans deserve that. Again, that's why they watch. They don't watch to listen to cliches. They don't watch for somebody to say, yeah, we brought 100% and we did a good job and we tried our hardest. No, they don't want to do that. They want to hear what you really think of the game. And you ask somebody who you don't like, they don't want to hear, I liked everybody. No, it's not true. They, that fans like to hear certain things. So I tried to give it to them.
Authentic.
I tried to give them as much as I possibly could. And again, that's at points in my life, I was very different. I was very outspoken. I was very controversial. Maybe one of the reasons why it took me so long to get to the Hall. But the fact of the matter is I'm here. I'm 54 years old. I'm at a different point in my life that I'm really looking forward to the golden age years, literally, seriously, and knowing that, I can't get any higher in terms of sports in terms of the Hall of Fame. And again, I'm going to reiterate, it's not just my Hall of Fame. It's my family. It's my family's Hall of Fame, and that we're going to celebrate that together.
Honestly, JR, I'm not sure how I want to phrase this, but I'm just going to kind of let my brain do the talking and not really think about it. But, I've heard you like tell stories about gambling and stuff, like, the Sunday afternoon game, you look at the out of town scores, the football scores, and you have a good laugh about it. I've talked to a couple players, not everyone is willing to speak on it, but where sports gambling is right now, like as a fan, it's thrown at you, it's in your face on TV. I'm kind of wondering what you make of that and what you would have thought about it in your playing day if gambling was so, I guess popular as it is right now. And I know you're open to talking about it, so I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously fine with it. I was always a big gambler. There's no question about it, and that's not a secret. And I think, gambling has become a very big part of society. And obviously you're seeing everything that's happening with all the gambling sites and, NHL allowing gambling, but not within the players. And I think it's really important that the leagues really police their own players extremely hard, and knowing that there's a lot of negativity and a lot of bad things that can happen through the gambling. And has in the past, but it's a big business. It's a lot like the drug business, like marijuana. I always say that the government should be the bookie and the dealer. Why don't they just take over everything, right? People are going to do it. It's inevitable, and more obviously, the government is passing more laws. States are passing more laws. I just think it has to be very, very regulated and controlled by the leagues. And, all these sites and all these things that are doing things, they have to make sure that they do it responsibly by giving people, that get problems, that generate problems off of it, or have help and have access to help. So that's very important. But it's a sticky situation, but it is our life. And unfortunately, just like everything I just said, it's going to happen no matter what. So either jump on board and help regulate it, or it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah. I only ask because you talked about like the fandom, and I just think like the fan experience has changed so much, because now, I've heard it in every arena. Like, you don't have teams or fans necessarily cheering for their teams. They're cheering for their props, and like, I just, I wonder if you heard back in the 90s, Roenick, get a fucking shot on goal. Like how you would have handled it.
Yeah. They listen, they're entitled to that.
Yeah.
And, we just hope that people don't make bets with their heart. You have to make bets with your head. And, usually the people that make bets with their heart are, not going to do too well. But hey, listen, that's part of sports, though. If that's what they want to do. People yelled at me and they weren't gambling. Just whatever. It's okay.
Well, the best run I ever had at a craps table was following your lead at Aria. And when I was just there for the draft, I walked by that table that we went on, that massive heater. I'd never even played craps before, but man, I walked away from that table with a shitload of money.
I've never played it either, Colby. You have to teach me.
Doesn't happen. Hey, Colby, it doesn't happen too often, so stay away.
Listen, I felt I'm counting my lucky stripes on that, but I'm glad Jonny got a little more present, because the last thing I wanted to bring up and talk to you before we're going to let you go here, JR, is the World Cup and the Olympics and what it means to represent your team. You got to do it in some epic battles, and it seems like international hockey is now back on the table. I mean, we worked in Olympics together. That was hard to watch without the NHL guys there. I mean, the hockey was terrible compared to what we would have liked to have seen. And so I'm just curious your thoughts on the fact that it's not truly the World Cup, it's the Four Nations tournament or whatever, because they were missing some of the best nations. And then we've got the Olympics. I mean, are you somebody that's a big believer in this and you really want to see these young stars? And what do you think USA's chances are this time around?
I think it's awesome to play for your own country. The Olympics to me is the echelon of sports, right? You can't get higher in sports. So to be able to represent your country in the Olympics is very, very special. So I'm not against the league being in the Olympics. I understand there's a lot of games stopping the season mid-season for a couple of weeks in order for everybody to do that. You got to remember these players in Russia and Czech Republic and Finland and Sweden. That's like the World Championships and the Olympics. That's almost bigger than than the Stanley Cup. So, and I think you can argue that fact, but it is really cool to watch nations battle against each other. I've always been a big fan of it. You're going to have injuries. There are going to be economic issues, obviously. Guys that are going to go over and play in the Olympics that are going to play 2 extra weeks where everybody else is going to get the time off in the NHL. Yeah, you can argue and bark at it, but still, it's big money. It's great entertainment. It's good exposure, and it's still the Olympics. And I think it's great that they're going to be back in because I agree with you. Colby, that hockey, the men's hockey in Korea was painful to watch, and the Four Nations Cup is going to be great. It's too bad that Russia's not going to be involved. It's kind of tough that they only picked 4 nations, and they're leaving out a couple really good countries not to be a part of it. But maybe they come in the next years. But I think USA is probably USA's become a real powerhouse. Over the many years here, starting in '96 when we won the World Cup in '96, then getting to the Olympics in 2002, getting to the final. Now we got a whole slew of Americans that literally put us up, and if not the best team in the world, it's definitely top 2 with Canada for sure.
Do you have a favorite moment that sticks out from international play? I mean, we may be able to guess it, but anything that really jumps out for you?
Yeah, of course. One I played in, one I didn't, right? So the 2002 gold medal game against Canada, we lost, but it was an epic game, right? It was just, that's where we made it as a nation. We were a superpower at that point. I didn't play in the 96 Cup because of a contract dispute, World Cup, which I still don't. I mean, I wish I loved to be a part of it, but I don't regret my decision because it was right during my peak earning years and I didn't have a contract. I go over to World Cup and play and get hurt. Now all of a sudden my peak earning years are done. And I just wasn't willing to take that chance at 26 years old. And then 1980 Olympics, watching that. I mean, that was one of the biggest mental things that I remember watching in all of international sports. The biggest and most unbelievable upset in sports history.
Mm-hmm. JR, I just got one more for you, and I know you look comfy over there, but I'm putting you on the hot seat here. We don't get to talk to current NHL players that are open and honest about where they'd want to go while we're recording live. If you're a free agent right now, we talk about these no income state tax teams, and that's a popular conversation now. Yeah. What team are you picking to go to right now? If you're a free agent, let's say, 33 years old, NHL free agent, what team are you going to?
There's 2 teams I would go to pick, and obviously Las Vegas is one of them, and Nashville would be another. Mm-hmm. And not just because of the state taxes and all that stuff, but the way of living, the style of life in Tennessee, the action. It's a wonderful, wonderful state. The fans there are fantastic. If you ever watch a game there, it's those 2 buildings, Nashville and Vegas, are the 2 most exciting places to watch a game as entertainment and fan participation go. It's Vegas is obviously it's a nightclub with a hockey game going on, and in Nashville, it's all the goalie's fault. It's all your fault. It's just there's a lot of great things between those cities that bring, when you want to live places where you can enjoy your life, not be bothered outside of the rink, and there's great places in Vegas. You live away from the strip. It's a great place to play. And obviously, yes, you have the no income, no state, no income tax aspect, puts 10% more into your pocket, which is a great thing.
I remember when I was there doing a game years ago, their first ever playoff game. You were there and you did the what is it, like the horn or whatever?
In Vegas,
yeah,
really?
and I blistered my whole hand up because it
No
kept
way.
moving in my hand. Yeah, and I had a big golf match the next day at Shadow Creek, and my hands were all blistered, so it was not good.
Yeah, that was the night you took us to dinner. You took us to a show. I mean, it was like, oh, you're in town. This is great. Like my night's all planned out. Just hang with JR. One of the many.
Yeah, it was a good time. And listen, you talk about Nashville. I'm going to be really excited to watch Steven Stamkos play in Nashville this year.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with him in the offseason and the way that the Tampa Bay Lightning treated him is an absolute disgrace and a disaster. And it's amazing to me what happened with Steven Stamkos. I'm a big fan of his, what he did for that city. To offer somebody $3 million as a 40-goal scorer, point a game guy,
crazy
is literally mind blowing. There's something way bigger behind the scenes on this one. I don't know what it is, Vigneault. I don't know what's going on here, but there's
and they
definitely
give Hedman the same contract that he got in Nashville.
There's something very, very odd, and something else that I hope it someday comes out, because Steven Stamkos is one of the classiest people on the planet. He did take less money to stay in Tampa, 5 or 6 years ago, which allowed them to keep Point, keep Kucherov, keep Hedman, keep a team that won a Stanley Cup and went to the Stanley Cup Finals 4 out of 5 years in a row, whatever the case may be. Steven Stamkos deserves to be treated better than he was treated at the end of his career in Tampa, and it's just a disgrace.
Totally agree. I think it was completely mismanaged, and then of course he takes the high road. He'll never talk about it because it's the kind of guy he is. JR, look, we appreciate it. We're getting you out of the sun in the middle of the day in the summer. Give Tracy, our best. If you do want to hear JR, by the way, catch him on his show that he does with Peelsy, Snipes and Stripes. How often do you guys record that show, JR?
We usually do it every Wednesday and Monday, but we, because of our busy schedules, we take the summer off, and we will start up again in September when camp starts, and get it rolling again. But we had a lot of fun. Thanks for pushing that. And anybody likes whiskey, my whiskeyinthewild.com, best chocolate whiskey you ever have. Check it out.
I can attest to that. I have tried it, and it is very, very good. We'll make sure we drop that link when we put the show out live tomorrow. But yeah, the show with Peelsy is funny. You guys are kind of the perfect yin and yang on that show, and I love that it's not all like we agree with each other. You guys definitely have different points of view, so it's a good.
Of course, we don't agree with each other. He's a referee. Yeah. I'm a hockey player, right? So we never got along on the ice. But Peelsy's a great man. He's one of my best friends. We have a great time together. It's nice to get two different kind of viewpoints, one from a player, one from a referee. So it adds a nice dimension. So I appreciate you giving it a plug.
Absolutely. All right, man. Look, have a good day. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest of your summer. We can't wait for the introduction to the Hall of Fame. Thanks for coming on. Super proud of you, man. I'm always, I like to brag about the fact that I can call you a friend, because it's just seriously something that I still have to be like, wow, like one of the coolest parts about what I've done in life is I get to be friends with JR and his family. So love you, pal.
You're kind. All the best to the family, and give that new baby a big hug and kiss. Okay.
All right. See you, bud.
All right.
Thanks, JR.
It's so good to just kind of hear his take on the whole Hall of Fame thing, because, I think you can hear how appreciative and sort of humbled he is by the experience, because it's the mecca of honors that you can get as a hockey player. And look, he should have been in a while ago, and you wonder why he wasn't. And he brought some of that stuff up, maybe, non-hockey related things, but I'm glad they did the right thing, Jonny. I'm glad they put him in. Anybody who's followed the game of hockey knows that this guy is a true Hall of Famer, off the ice, an entertainer on the ice and off the ice. I mean, we need more personalities like him in the game now, to be honest. Imagine a 25-year-old JR with social media in the NHL right now. I mean, he'd have his own, Amazon would be doing a show about him, right? I mean, because he's just this larger than life personality. But like I said, the way he treats everyone around him, like there's been no person more generous to me that I've met, in that class of human beings that I've met in my career. And I wasn't just saying it because he was on with us. Like I've reaped the benefits of being invited on vacations and invited to golf tournaments and just everything, because he takes care of people. That's who he is.
Well, I wanted to ask him something along the lines of that question. I know it's a typical question to ask like a former player, who reminds you of yourself in today's game, but he mentioned his ego. And that's something that I feel like, there are a couple of players in the NHL who have one, but not many show it. Right. And, hockey's one of those sports you got to check your ego at the door, and it's all, it's a team game, ultimate team game. And, guys put their personalities and egos aside, and that's how you win. But I got to imagine you would have a better idea than I would, because I didn't really grow up watching JR so much. I mean, he retired in 2009 and I was 12.
There's no one like him. There's no honestly.
One like not even Matthew Tkachuk. Like
there's no, because it's just so different, right?
Yeah.
Like
I wouldn't even say Tkachuk has an ego. It's like it's just a swagger.
But here's the thing about JR is JR's play did the talking for him. Like, sure, he would have something to say in a post-game interview, but he would, like I said, he'd punch you in the face and then he'd have a hat trick, right? Like, he was such an old school, could do it all, offensively gifted, physically gifted player that, there's nobody that plays like him anymore. I mean, I understand where you're going with the Matthew Tkachuk thing, because
he backs it up.
He has that old school, but again, JR, if you remember when he was dancing, when he was in LA, and
I was like 5.
The thing with the Zamboni where he was water skiing behind the Zamboni, like he was a true entertainer. And I think when he talks about his relationship with the fans, and when he felt like people pay their hard-earned money to be here, so I need to make it worth it for them, he wore that on his shoulder for his entire team. He really did. And
that's not what today's game is, though.
Guys don't think about that. And I think JR said that in the interview, and he said that as much, that he wished more players thought about that, but he wore that on his sleeve as a player. I remember it watching him as a kid in Philly, and I've just seen that's how he operates in life. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing with him, where you're going with him. I didn't even bring this up on the show. One time since I've known him since 2011. So, we're talking 13 years now, right?
Good math.
He one time called me and was like, I need you to get something done for me. And I was so excited that he called me and actually I could help him or do something for him.
Yeah.
And he just needed me to get some tickets to a Red Sox playoff game, like really good seats. And he knew I knew, Mr. Hayes.
Plug like that?
Well, Jimmy and Kevin Hayes' father is, 100+ seats at Fenway. And I grew up with Jimmy, playing with Jimmy, rest in peace. Obviously we know the story, but and he knew that. And so I reached out to Mr. Hayes and got the tickets for his friend. It wasn't even for him. It was for someone else, but I was so excited to be able to like return the favor, because I had spent all this time with him in all these different events, even at the Olympics a couple of years ago. And he never lets you pay for anything. Ever. Like, he literally gets it paid before you even think about the end of the meal to make sure you don't try. And so I was so excited to be able to do something for him for once, right? And that's, look, you won't find someone that I like talking about more than him. And I know it, it probably sound like I was kissing his ass on the show.
Oh, it definitely did. Yeah, it definitely did.
But I got to tell you something. It's completely genuine based on the experiences that we've had together and the drinking nights. And I remember sitting in the Russia house at the Olympics in Korea with Alexei Yashin. And there was a group of us, like 8 or 10 people. PJ Stock was there, Ray Ferraro, AJ Malesko. Like, it was a group. Kenny Albert was there. It was a group of guys. Chris Cuthbert. And then everyone one by one started leaving. And JR was like, no, you're staying. And I just stayed with him and Alexei Yashin, and they just kept refilling our shot glasses like 4 or 5 in the morning, and the whole house is closed down, but Alexei Yashin's like royalty, right? So they keep it open for him. And it was just so, I got to have so much fun with him.
I've never seen you this giddy, dude, ever.
And so, getting him on here and seriously, when he finally got into the Hall of Fame and I read that, I screamed out loud. I screamed with excitement for him because look, it was bullshit that he hadn't been in yet. Like, it was bullshit. It was not related to hockey. It was related to other things. And I thought that was total bullshit. And I'm glad they brought him back in. So, that's really, to wrap that interview with him. It was awesome. I think you and I were talking about like what a great New York Ranger he would have been. Imagine JR in New York City being on the Rangers. I mean, he played for LA, but.
No, but that's also why I was curious to ask him like what team he'd want to sign with right now.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy who I feel like would embrace those like bright lights of a Toronto or New York and those pressure at like atmosphere.
But he played in Philly, which was a massive pressure atmosphere. He played in Chicago, massive hockey market. I think he chose two newer because again, he thinks about quality of life. Think of the quality of life.
But I found that so interesting though.
I'm not surprised. I know he loves Vegas. JR loves Vegas, loves it. Mm-hmm. Anytime I've been with him in Vegas, he's like, he walks around Vegas. Everybody knows him. People in the restaurants, casinos. He's got connections up to wazoo. I've gone to a bunch of Cirque du Soleil shows with them. That he loves Vegas. He loves it, right? His son lives in San Diego. He always flies up and meets us up there. So he loves Vegas, right? And then there's obviously great golf in Vegas. And then Nashville. Dude, the fans in Nashville are incredible. Bridgestone is loud. The music scene in Nashville.
Nashville, I can get behind in a heartbeat.
The living situation. So I'm not actually surprised at all because he's done the high pressure Northeast, Philly, Midwest, Chicago, massive hockey market. He's played on the West Coast in LA. He picked two incredibly passionate fan bases. That's what he picked. Maybe not your traditional markets, but hey. Where did the biggest 3 free agents just sign?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not, it's not crazy. The secret's out. Players want to play there. I just don't think their GM was ever necessarily a big game hunter, right? Like he just wasn't. And he tried with Johansson a couple of years ago and Duchesne, and it didn't work out. But I think this will be a lot more successful. So look, I think it kind of leads us into the fact that it's been really quiet in the NHL over the last week or two. And, we've been texting in our group text about, is Vegas a team that is still to keep our eye on? Are they going to make a big move? Is Mitch Marner going to end up there? I mean, I've been fighting with Frank Saravalli on every Daily Faceoff platform about the fact that he thought that would be he'd be gone. And now people are, the betting market says, on Betway favors the fact that Mitch Marner's a Toronto Maple Leaf next year, right? And so Vegas still, to me, is the one team, though, that would take that shot and swing for the fences with Marner. But it's been quiet. Like, could you see that happening?
I mean, Vegas, I feel like you can never count out, right? Like
exactly.
They always find a way to surprise you.
They want to win now and not think about tomorrow. But I start to worry about what's going to happen to them in the next couple of years. Like, are they gonna crash and burn?
But who is Toronto taking in return? That's kind of what.
Well, look, I think Shea Theodore is a guy that I think Toronto would and should be really interested in.
But I wouldn't do that if I were Vegas.
I mean, look, you have Alex Pietrangelo, you have McNabb. They have. I would have to pull up their.
You're basically doing like a rental for a rental scenario because they both have 1 year left.
Exactly.
Right?
And look, are you going to be able to re-sign Theodore? And I think honestly, I think Vegas is a place Mitch Marner would re-sign. Even if you get him without the extension, I think that's the kind of place that will woo you into re-signing, right? So Vegas to me would be one of the least dangerous places to have a rental player go because any guy who goes and plays in Vegas is going to want to stay there. They are. Those guys get treated as well as anybody else in the NHL. Their owner will do anything to win. Players love that. right? You're not worried about rebuilds and young players getting minutes because it's part of a plan and blah, blah, blah. It's let's win now. We'll worry about the future another day, right? And so to me, that's the only place I could see Marner ending up. Otherwise, I think he's a Toronto Maple Leaf next year.
But yeah, that point that you just made, like, I don't know if Marner's that answer of let's win right now. Like, if you're getting rid of Theodore for Marner, I think that is a better deal for Toronto, like, without a doubt.
I'm
And
not
I think
sure.
everyone,
I think
everyone would agree with that.
The reason I'm not sure about that is because, look, Theodore's had some injury troubles as of late. He's not been playing.
You don't think very high of him. We kind of argued this on the last show.
That's not true. It's not that I don't think very high of him. I just don't think that he's like, to me,
he teeters that elite line, right?
He's an all-star caliber defenseman, right? But is he an elite? Is he in that top group, right? Like you talk about Hedman and Yossi and Makar, Taves even. I know I'm not saying everyone, so don't get angry at me if you're the fan of Adam Fox. Like, you know,
I'd categorize like Devon Taves and Shea Theodore a little similarly.
Okay, Taves probably doesn't belong in there. You're probably right. He's probably on the end of that top tier. But like, you know how when we talk about players and we're like, all right, there's the first 7 to 10, and then there's like the next group of 5 that's like borderline in, but not
that
quite
first 7
in.
to 10, I'd say superstar, then elite.
Right.
Like that's kind of how I'd do it.
I think elite is the top of the category, right? Like I put elite at so I think Theodore's a star. I think he's an all-star, but I don't think he's like your number one guy. Like I don't think you're winning. You're not winning a cup without Alex Pietrangelo being your number one.
No, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
So I think Shea Theodore is a great number 2. And I think Mitch Marner is like a good number 2, right? He's not going to drive you home in the playoffs, but you know, you take Mitch Marner and you put him in Vegas with Bruce Cassidy, you know, he's a guy that can get more out of a player. Look what he did with Jack Eichel. Look how he turned Eichel, helped Eichel become a 200-foot player. So it's one area where I could see that going down, you know, and when things are quiet is when Vegas will generally drop a bomb and make things happen. And I have no idea when it's going to happen, Johnny, but if there is a trade to be made, I think that could be one of them.
I would actually bet you, I mean, I don't know how there's a winner and loser of this. It's either like one of us is right or we're both kind of wrong. I think there's a better chance of Laine going to Vegas than Marner.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think both of them could go because I think Laine, the acquisition cost is a lot lower. Like, I think Columbus looks at Laine as dead money now. I don't think that they're looking at him as like this productive, like he's almost dead money at this point. So, we also don't know what's going on with Laine's. He has been reinstated. Not that he's in trouble.
No, he's got 2 years left on his deal though. You're getting Laine for 2 years.
He's been in the assistance program. He's clearly not going to be part of Don Waddell's future. You know, he's a new GM, new president. I don't think you're talking about similar situations, and I don't think you're saying you are.
That's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get that. I don't mean I'm not trying to call you out like that. No. But
I just think we talked about trade talks, and Laine has been super quiet lately when it was clear he wants out of Columbus. And I think if you're going to take a chance on a player, I'd pick maybe Laine over Marner right now, just because you're getting Laine for 2 years, and it's no guarantee that.
But I'm not. But here's the difference. I'm not trading Shea Theodore for Laine, right? Like I would never make that trade because with Laine, you have no idea what you're going to get. Okay, when you talk about Mitch Marner, I mean Mitch Marner, you can't say that the guy's not a productive player for 82 games.
I don't think anyone's ever said that.
Exactly. So Laine, you have no idea what you're getting. With Marner, you have an idea of what you're getting, right? I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now. It looks like it's still alive and well.
It is.
Because I just wanted to look and see, look, there are some prospects in the system. You've got Brendan Brisson, who was a first-round pick, who played some games last year, and he did some good things.
Nasty in college.
They have a couple of other young players that could be, potentially looked at. They signed Victor Olofsson to a, $1 million deal, basically. But, you got to remember, they have no cap space, right? So you got to think dollars in, dollars out. And, Shea Theodore makes $5.2 million. That's, so they'd have to get creative in order to even fit Marner. But you look at the rest of their defensemen. They've got Whitecloud, they've got McNabb, they've got Noah Hannafin. We didn't even bring up Noah Hannafin. Like when you have Pietrangelo and Hannafin, and you've got Pietrangelo for 1, 2, 3, and Hannafin for 8. Shea Theodore becomes expendable. Like he really does. So I wouldn't put him in a Laine deal, but I'd put him in a Marner deal. But we'll see. Laine, I think Laine would be the cheaper, sort of less cost. The acquisition cost would be a heck of a lot less on Laine.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up Laine's name too because I feel like that was a pretty loud topic for a bit, and it's gotten pretty quiet. Like same with Marty Necas. That's another one that's been really quiet.
Necas has been quiet. I wonder how that's going to go now that they have a new
Vic,
GM.
thank you for that.
I think the Ehlers thing. Like I think if you're Winnipeg, you've got a guy in Ehlers who's played there a long time. Like I'd be scared to trade a guy who's been there a long time because like Winnipeg is having a hard time getting players to come there, listen, I have a note here about Rutger McGroarty and that whole situation, right? Like nothing has happened. Nobody's been willing to meet the price. And they're looking for a lot for Rutger. And look, I think Rutger's an NHLer no matter what. And that's an interesting situation that, I could see. Rutger would be a great Boston Bruin. He'd fit really well there. He'd fit really nicely. Really, you look at any of those like Northeast teams with like personality. Like I know the Flyers are bad right now, but
I was actually thinking Philly.
You could see like that kid would be a Flyer, right? Yeah. You think about that, that phrase that they're using. We want players that want to be a fucking Flyer, right? Well, that kid would, Rutger McGroarty would fit that bill really nicely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, I kind of think of him and I think that Philly badass mentality.
Perfect for him.
Right.
But Bruins too. Listen.
They're similar. They're similar.
Exactly. Right. Any of those markets. So
the Bruins are like a more classy Flyers, if that makes sense. Right.
I think that's probably a fair way to put it.
Is that fair?
What about the fact that Brian McClellan is now the president? Excuse me. He was president and GM. Mm-hmm. He relinquished GM title. Okay. A week ago, did I not?
You called that. Nailed it on the head.
Look, I did not have any prior knowledge of that. I swear to God, I had no prior knowledge. I just looked at the fact that he's been there since, 20 plus years. He's been GM for 10 years. That's what happens in these organizations because they have really impressive executives that they don't want to lose. So a guy like McClellan goes to a corner office. He's only president now. He's going to let someone else deal with the day-to-day of building the roster. I'm sure he's still going to be involved. But when he made that trade for Dubois, I was like, how long will he be there as the GM to even have to deal with this?
I honestly, I don't have much to say. You kind of called it. What else is there for me to say? I don't really know.
Look, the tea leaves were on the wall. Like you're just putting, and I know, hopefully Jeremiah will listen to this episode because he's obviously a Caps fan. And it's too bad we don't have the live chat because I'd want to know what he'd be, chiming in.
I do miss the chat. Yeah, I do
in the chat. But, look, you could sort of see the writing on the wall with that coming. Spencer Carberry has been talking about how excited he is to coach him. And look, I think that it'll be interesting to see. Like, for whatever reason, I have some level of optimism because I know Spencer Carberry that could work. I have some level of optimism between Ovechkin, Carberry. I do have some level of optimism, but you look at Washington, right? Talk about a model of consistency. 3 general managers since 1982. Now we're on the 4th. You had Poyle, McPhee, and McClellan. Now, McPhee was GM and then became president for McClellan and then moved on to Vegas, right? And now, McClellan moves on to be president to make wave. I forget the new GM's name. I'm drawing a blank. Vic, maybe you could pop that in the chat. But it is cool how Ted Leonsis, the owner, he's clearly not a guy who makes quick decisions, and they develop. Chris Patrick is his name. They develop their own GMs from within. McClellan started as a scout 20 years ago, right? Like, that's cool to me. I like when they're rewarding people, they're giving people runway to do their jobs in Washington, and then they're promoting from within to be GMs. I personally like that type of situation.
I do want to read one thing though, because it was posted by, I believe, Dropping the Gloves. Matt Roy, who went to Washington, was teammates with Pierre-Luc Dubois in LA. I don't know if you saw this quote. Did you see the quote that Roy had about Dubois?
No.
All right, I'll read it. So I found it very interesting because the media obviously paints this picture of Pierre-Luc Dubois, and this is what Roy had to say. So here are the quotes for those listening on audio only. I think if you asked him, he would say he had a down year, but it's nothing like, I feel like the media paints this picture of him. And to me, it couldn't be further from the truth. You know, he's a great teammate. He's a great locker room guy. He gets along with everybody. So in terms of all that, I don't know where the media is getting all this stuff. If I hated the guy, I probably wouldn't have come to Washington. He's one of my closer friends on the team, and I really think he's going to have a bounce back year, and I think he's going to be really good for the team. So that was what Matt Roy said about
Well,
Dubois.
I'm glad he said that because I saw media people chirping Matt Roy for signing there after they traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I'm like, what a dumb thing to chirp a player for. Like, you're getting the free. I mean, please, we could do a whole show on the stupid things that writers tweet, during any period of time in the NHL season. But look, it's always good to see a guy who goes out and is willing to stand up and stick up for it, because you don't have to say anything, right? No. It's not like you had to say anything. So, you could have just given the old, stock answer. But, he went out of his way to hit that point home. So that's why I'm saying I don't know why. And maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe you're rubbing off on me in that regard. But
in what regard?
Well, I said maybe I'm an idiot. So I said maybe you're rubbing off on me a little bit. But I just think that it maybe is going to work out in at least in the short term for a year or two. Like, maybe that could work out really well as they're kind of going for this bigger picture of Ovechkin's record and trying to hang on and be good and be competitive. I saw TJ Oshie has been talking about whether he'll be back or not. Yeah, exactly. That whole situation, Oshie's basically said, look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play the way that I want to play. And so I don't know if I'm going to be able to play next year, but I want to play. We've talked about on the show that we think he's going to retire. Everything that I'm hearing him talk about, like, I don't know if he's going to play. Like, I would say if I was a betting man, I don't think he's going to be able to play.
Yeah, and all signs seem to be pointing in that direction that he's not going to play. And obviously, I don't know if anyone followed along Capitals development camp, but Ryan Leonard looked pretty damn good in development camp from all the clips that I saw.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about development camps.
I figured you might.
But go ahead. You can finish.
I was going to say Ryan Leonard's going to step right in, and he'll be another piece of that puzzle. Like, as soon as BC season's over, I think Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault are both going into the NHL.
I disagree about Gabe
Perreault. Maybe to Hartford first, but I think Ryan Leonard is wearing a Capitals jersey at some point this year.
I don't think Gabe Perreault's game is nearly as ready for the NHL as Ryan Leonard.
I agree, but I don't think he'd stay for a third year. I don't see Perreault staying for a third year.
But you're in a win now mode if you're the Rangers, and you're not going to tell him we're putting you right into the NHL. I think that could go a little bit longer. Now, of course, it becomes risky for Drury if he goes back to be a junior, but yeah, let's see how his year is this year. Like, I think they're both great players, but I think Leonard is a special talent. I mean,
if I was putting money on it, I think Perreault signs as soon as Boston College.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So let's talk about development camps, and this will be kind of the last thing I think we'll talk about. I know we were going to maybe talk about some of the potential extensions that we could be seeing, but
save that.
Yeah, I think we could save that. This whole development camp thing, it to me, I'm a fan of development camps, right? But I think putting players on the ice the first few days of July and having them do battle drills is super archaic, right? It's dumb. What player's body is ready to battle in July? Okay. The goal for hockey players is to get better during the summer and to ramp up for training camp. You ramp up off the ice with your workouts and on the ice for hockey, right? So to throw these kids into these development camp situations as 18, 19, 20-year-old kids in July and have them doing 2-on-2 battle drills in the corner, I don't understand what that does for anybody. Some of the drills I saw, they're skating with their skate on one puck and their edges on another. Like, it's really, to me, it's really archaic. And, I'm going to tell you from my personal experience, I did 2 development camps with the Colorado Avalanche. First one, I got a high ankle sprain in a scrimmage, and then I couldn't go to World Junior tryouts, and I basically missed all of the beginning of preseason for my sophomore year at BU, or freshman year. I don't remember what year, whatever it was. And then I played with my foot taped for half the season, all from a development camp high ankle sprain in July. Okay. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
But when would you make it? September?
So here's the thing. No. Have development camp in July. You don't need to put these guys on the ice. There's no reason to be on the ice. My second development camp in Colorado, hold on.
Yeah.
We did not go on the ice. We didn't. Really? We golfed. We did off-ice workouts. We did nutrition. We did a community event. And we did team building with like a Navy SEAL guy in like a hike through the mountains. We went to Red Rocks. It was much more of a bonding experience. Meet everyone, meet the trainers, meet the coaches, meet the equipment guys, like learn your way around the locker rooms, because you still have rookie camp before NHL training camp. That is the on ice, right? You're ramping up. You're disrupting players' summer training basically for 2 weeks in the summer. All right. Some guys,
it's not 2, it's like 3 days.
I'm saying you're disrupting 2 weeks because you've basically got to, all of a sudden, your strength and conditioning coach has to ramp you up for like 10 days to get you ready for testing in the middle of the summer and on ice battle work, right? So you're disrupting the flow of your off ice training program. And with how good sports science is now, I don't understand how nobody's talking about that. Now, the Chicago Blackhawks, they have a young general manager. They do not do on ice at their development camp. And I think within 10 years, you'll see 80% of the teams not doing on ice during development camp. I just, too many injuries, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Do you know what Chicago did instead? Or
they do a lot of the things that I just talked about.
Yeah.
They do off ice workouts. Okay, which I'm a fan of, right? They they meet with nutritionists. They do a cooking class on how to cook healthy. They do resources about potential substance abuse problems, gambling stuff. They took them to a baseball game at Wrigley to throw out the first pitch, like stuff like that, like team building, because you're building the future of your organization at these development camps. I don't think having these guys battle 2-on-2 in July, like, think about you, Jonny.
Well, I was going to give my own perspective after.
Were you doing battle drills in July?
So what I was going to say, I was never invited to a development camp. I almost got invited to the Islanders, almost. But like I would have given my left nut to show NHL scouts and organizations that I could do that. So for the guys who aren't drafted, I think that's a great opportunity to show yourself and showcase yourself on the ice, where just because you're invited to development camp doesn't mean you're invited to rookie camp, right? Like, I don't think it's the same exact roster, is it? Like,
no, it's not, me. Jonny. And I got to tell you something. Do you know how a lot of these guys end up there? And this
it's connections and politics.
Their favors and connections. Hey, can you get my client in here just so I can tell their parents I got them a development camp? I got to tell you something. Nobody gets a contract in July at development camp.
No, but I think it also just, but for the players like me to have that opportunity, like that's the only chance I would have had to wear an NHL crest, like even if it were a favor. And when you get that favor, I would like to make the most of that opportunity,
Well, listen, and I can't dog what you're saying at all. I get it. But NHL,
I get it from your end too. Like it's too risky for a guy like you,
It's not the feel good league. And when I get a high ankle sprain in development camp in a 3-on-3 scrimmage, and then I can't go to World Junior tryouts, like that sucks. And then I can't do any of preseason at BU, right? Like, so I'm just thinking about it. And here's what I think we should do. I have a friend who's the head of sports science for the Boston Bruins. Okay. He used to actually be my strength coach here in Philly. He used to run a training facility here, and now he's in the NHL. He's killing it. Right. His name is Kevin Neild, and I'd love to have him on, and I'd love to talk to him about the the science behind a summer training program and peak athletic performance and how you ramp guys up. I would love to do that because I just think really smart people in sports science. And listen, the GMs are going to do what they want, but I think a lot of these smart strength and conditioning coaches and people are cringing at battle drills in July. They are, because I just think it's disruptive.
Isn't Macklin Celebrini's dad in like one of those titles with the Warriors?
Right? Similar. Yeah. You know, I don't know Mr. Celebrini, right? Okay. But I would want to get someone from the NHL because I'd want to get his point of view. And look, the Bruins have an on ice component. They're doing on ice. Don't
they do like 300-yard shuttles too and shit at their development camp?
I don't think they do the 300-yard shuttle test anymore. We used to do. I've
heard their development camp is miserable.
we did that in training camp. We had to do 300-yard shuttle tests. That was our conditioning test. I remember I ran between Zdeno Chara and Dennis Seidenberg because it went off of weight, body weight. You ran with your weight class. And you know, Dennis Seidenberg was like 210. I was like maybe 215. Chara was, 400 pounds of muscle, but nobody was even close to him. Adam McQuaid was in our group. It was like 4 or 5 guys, and Johnny Boychuk, because we were kind of the big, big heavy dudes, right?
Yeah.
The defenseman, right? So it was brutal, but I don't think that there's a real benefit to putting these kids on the ice in July. I really don't. I think that time could be spent way, way better, letting them golf, letting them team bond, letting them do some training with a Navy SEAL, nutrition, all these things. I think it would be better off. And again, I know Kyle Davidson subscribes to it because that's what they do. I know back in the day, our Colorado GM was Francois Jaguar. He did because, again, we did do it the first year, and then they didn't do on ice the next couple of years. But I'll make a prediction, Johnny, that I really do think within 10 years, you'll see very few teams with an on ice portion. And look at the media. They sit there and they like live tweet every shift and of every drill. And they're like, oh, this guy's so good. And it's like, it's fucking July. And he went around the top of the circle. Like Macklin Celebrini went around the top of the circle and shot it in the net. And your pals at the Hockey News are like, having an out-of-body experience, and I'm just reading it, and I'm like, this is
Let the Sharks fans get excited, man. They've gone through enough.
I get it. I want them to be excited. They have a lot to be excited about with those guys, right? But I don't know. I think it's archaic. I really do. I think it's archaic.
Vic just made a funny comment. Only Lou, while he's still the GM of the Islanders in 10 years, will have the on-ice stuff.
Well, how about this, Vic? The New York Islanders don't even do a development camp. They don't have one. They didn't have. They had one this year?
I don't know if they did this year, but one of my best friends was in their development camp like 2 years ago.
They didn't have a development camp this year. I'm 99% sure they didn't have a development camp this year. Maybe something, Vic, you can look up as we're talking here. But I'm pretty positive they didn't. And the reason that I know that they didn't is because Dennis Seidenberg is a good friend of mine and works in sort of that role. And he was not at a development camp in the last week or two. Like so I'm pretty sure.
I texted Stefan Rosner, a good friend of mine, covers the Islanders. Shout out Stefan, and they did not have a development camp. Wow, I didn't know that.
I think we're making fun of Lou for being archaic because he is, but
he's the opposite.
But I think development camp is good, Johnny. I really do. I think there's a major bonus of having it. I think my experiences of going and getting to know everyone. So when you get there at training camp, you know everyone's name, you know where to go. You're more comfortable. You just are. Like, even at development camp, I got to meet Joe Sakic and I got to meet Johnny Lyles and like guys that I ended up, playing with and being around. And it just made things more comfortable. I also was in development camp with Tyson Barrie and Shattenkirk and, Calvin Pickard. And then all of a sudden you get to training camp and you see all these guys and you feel, Brandon Yip and Chris Stewart. We were all in development camp together. And then my first game in the NHL in Colorado, all the guys I just mentioned were all on the team. Yeah. And so there's just already a comfortability there. So I like development camp, but I don't think the on-ice part of development camp is worth it. That's my beef with development camp.
That's totally fair. Maybe a solution would be like make development camp a thing for non-draft picks. Like if kids want to like showcase themselves and get invited, like let them pick.
Like open tryouts.
Something like that along those lines, right?
Like the Eagles did all those years ago with Vince Papal.
Well, yeah. Like, do the Sharks need to see Macklin Celebrini on the ice in July? Probably not. But like, if they want,
I think for them it's a little different. They wanted to,
hype them up a
show
little
their
bit.
fans. But listen, the Blackhawks drafted Bedard last year. They didn't do on ice.
Yeah.
Okay. This like Kyle didn't say, oh, you know what? We were terrible and we got Bedard, so now we're gonna do on the ice, right? So, I just, again, I'd love to too. Like, I do think Danny Briere is someone we're gonna try to get on here.
Yeah.
I have no problem giving him my opinion on that and asking.
Oh, I would love for you to say that to Danny Briere.
and asking him why they do it, right? Like, because I do think a lot of the reason people do it is because it's old habit, right? Like, that's what you're supposed to do. Get a guy like Kyle Davidson who's not afraid to break the mold. He's a 36-year-old general manager, right? So, we'll see if it evolves, but that is my prediction, though. I think within 10 years, you will not see teams or a majority of the teams going on the ice. That's my prediction.
And lose ahead of the curve. So good for him. But it's a good rant that you went on. I don't think we have many other topics, but I do just want to take a quick second to shout out one of our sponsors, and that is Out West. So if you haven't yet, it is golf season right now. And I've been in my Out West polos whenever I'm outside because they're the most comfortable things that I own, honestly, right now. And I don't know about you in Philly, but it's been hot as shit here in New York. I can't even walk 3 blocks outside without sweating my ass off, but at least I'm comfortable doing it. And that is outwestgolf.com. And you can get 15% off using our code Cuppa on your first order. So go to outwestgolf.com and use our code CUPPA Cuppa for 15% off of your first order.
I actually I went over to a Roenick golf club the other day. One of my friends invited me and I wore the white Out West polo. And my buddy was like, oh, that's a cool logo. What's that one? So I was, showing him the website and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, I think I've seen an ad for that on Instagram before.
We're going to need some hats next. Give us some hats.
Yeah. Hey, tell your guy West.
Yeah.
We got to get some good hats. Some other just quick news I just want to throw out there to wrap that I saw on Twitter. The KHL in Russia announced today that they're separating Russia hockey and the IIHF. So the KHL is going to be independent from the IIHF. So they want to have the same legal status as the NHL. Like, the NHL is not governed by the IIHF, right? The IIHF does govern all the leagues in Europe, and the KHL is separating from that, right? They're no longer going to fall under the IIHF, which is interesting.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was like a thing.
Because that will sort of affect, transfer cards. Normally, you need an IIHF transfer card to sign a player from a foreign league, but now they will not need to do that. So they will continue to release their players for the Olympics and for Worlds when they're allowed back in. But that is an interesting thing that could create some complications with the KHL and signing other players. Basically, like, if you're signed in Germany, which is IIHF sanctioned, and you want to go to the KHL, they don't need to trade for you. They don't need to. You could just sign in the KHL. There's not going to be any transfer card, any issue.
Can I actually ask you to describe one more topic just before we wrap up?
Sure.
Can you go through, because I know there are a couple of players, I think it was 14 players that filed for arbitration.
Right.
Just that process quickly. Just because I know there's a lot of people who are confused about it. I have a hard time explaining it. And I know that you're really good at obviously talking about these things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not an expert. I never went through it. But what I can tell you is, as a player puts in for arbitration, it makes, I think the deadline at that point, you go to, it's basically a hearing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And, there's an arbiter, right? Like a judge.
Yeah.
And the team presents their case of why they think the player should be X number. Like, you submit the number you think this player, and then it's like a court hearing.
Mm-hmm.
The player
only for RFAs, right?
So for an RFA, I want $10 million. Here's why. I did these 50 things, and these 50 players in the NHL did these 50 things, and they all got X, Y, and Z, right? And the team says, well, we think it's 7 million, and this is why, and they present their case. It's literally presenting to a judge who's an arbiter, and then the arbiter can reward a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, okay? And the team at that point, if the deal is too rich, the team can walk away and you become a UFA. Like, let's say, a player
Ryan
goes
Lindgren right now. Ryan Lindgren
is going through it. The judge, the arbiter could award him $7 million 1-year deal, right? That won't happen. I'm just making numbers up.
Of course, yeah.
The Rangers could say, we're not paying that, and they could just walk away. He becomes a UFA, right? But if it's a deal that's more than the Rangers wanted to pay, but they don't want to lose him, well, then they have to pay it. Or if it's less, he then has to sign it, right? So there's no more negotiating once you go to arbitration. Now, you can negotiate up to the minute you walk into arbitration, right? But the minute that case starts, or before, excuse me, you can make your cases and everything. Once the arbiter rules a number, that's it, right? Like, you're at a dead end. So, it puts pressure on both sides.
Okay.
I
remember
it also means if player or club files for arbitration, teams cannot give offer sheets, right? So, Jeremy Swayman could get an offer sheet, right? But, Lindgren cannot. No team can offer sheet him because they're going to arbitration.
Mm-hmm. I just know, I remember, like, we were talking about Lou, and it kind of just like came up in my head because I was thinking about Scotty Gomez. He told me a story once where he filed for arbitration, I think, with the Devils, and after going at it, I guess, in the courtroom or whatever, he ended up taking a piss like right next to Lou in the bathroom after the case was closed, and it was like a funny little urinal experience that those two had after battling it out. But I just didn't know if it's like, if you are a Rangers, I guess, fan, it's not like it's a bad thing that Lindgren did this, right?
I don't think Lindgren will get to arbitration. I think a deal will get done before.
Okay.
Even if it happens the morning of. Teams don't generally like getting and going to arbitration. It gets ugly with players because you have to sit in a courtroom, again, courtroom, a conference room, whatever. And you have to shit on your player and explain to them why he's not worth what he thinks he's worth with him sitting 5 feet away from you, 10 feet away from you. It's an uncomfortable situation.
And it's the GM doing it?
It's the GM. It could be the assistant GM. It could be the cap guy. I mean, it could be a number of people.
Yeah.
And it's a player and his agent.
Damn, that's awkward. Yeah.
It does it. That's
why
you
should put that in like these behind the scenes shows with Amazon they're doing.
Deals get done before they get to arbitration, generally. So
okay. Thank you for clarifying.
We'll keep an eye. Listen, I'm not an expert on that. I'm 99% sure what I just said is mostly correct. But again, most of the time deals get done like the day before arbitration case or the morning of an arbitration case. Like, that's why you see that. It's not a good situation going to arbitration. And look, Jeremy Swayman, neither player or club filed for arbitration. And I hear that the sides are not close with Jeremy Swayman. Like, I continue to hear that there's a standoff between Swayman and the Boston Bruins because, Swayman wants, in my opinion, I think he wants double digits. And I think the Bruins want to pay him $8 million a year. And I think he wants 10. And I think Shesterkin, I've heard, wants 12. And I think the Shesterkin situation is going to get ugly this summer. I think that is a situation that as we get closer to the year, we're going to put these episodes out once a week, Wednesday mornings. At some point, we'll do another live one whenever we can.
If there's big news, maybe, too.
The Shesterkin deal is going to get ugly. And I could see Drury telling him to pound sand. I could. I'm just saying, because I don't think paying a goalie $12 million would be the right decision. I think that's way too much. I think 10 I'd be okay with. I think 12, no way. I think give Shesterkin 10, but not 12.
I obviously, we got to wrap this show up at some point. I don't want to ramble too much, but I am on the camp of you give the man his money. That guy.
But 10 million is the number.
But it's hard to come by a guy as talented as Shesterkin's been over the last couple of years. And I know he had a little bit of a hiccup this season.
I agree.
But the Rangers don't get anywhere close to where they've been without Shesterkin. I know now these arguments are like, well, the Oilers got to the Cup final with Stuart Skinner. Well, guess what? They got fucking McDavid and
what was the difference in Game 7?
Bobrovsky.
A goalie who stood on his head for 10 million versus a goalie who let in a soft goal for a couple million.
Yeah.
Take everything else away. Game 7, biggest game of the entire season. Your $10 million goalie stood up. The 2.5 or whatever. What does Skinner make? A couple million bucks. He did. And Stuart Skinner was really good, but he let a soft goal in. That goal was soft. That can't go in a Stanley Cup Game 7. That's the difference. It's a 1-goal game in Game
2.6.
Okay, so like maybe the happy medium is finding a $6 or $7 million UC Saros. I don't know. And then you spend that extra $7 million on some star defensemen like Vegas did. Vegas's defensive group was stacked when they won. Yeah. Stacked. So like there's different camps, but I'd give him 10 million and I'd probably give Swayman 9 million. But I wouldn't give anybody 12 or 13 million bucks. But if you're giving him 8-year deals, Johnny, what's 10 million going to be in 6 years against the cap? That percentage is going to go down 4 or 5% because the cap's going to be 110 or 15 million.
But they're going to have to,
but that's the argument.
We'll say
that's the argument the agents are making. Shesterkin's agent and Swayman's agent. They're making the argument that sure, is 10 or 11 million a lot today, but in 3 years, it's not going to be that much because the percentage against the cap when the cap's at 105 or 8 million. So I think that's all we have for today.
We're trying wrapping this show up like 3 times.
Look, we're doing one a week, so we want to cover things we want to talk about. It was great having JR on. It's just interesting to see the evolution. I think like the Hall of Fame thing, I think has struck him in his heart. And I could just hear it in his voice a little bit. I really could. But other than that, I think we hit on what's been going on. I think hopefully next week we'll have some more free agents to talk about. There's still a group of guys out there that are good hockey players that don't have jobs. So hopefully we'll have some news in the next week that we can riff on.
Should we tease our guests for next week? I also do want to give a nice mazel tov to the Fox family. Adam got married on Sunday.
You didn't get invited to that wedding?
No, I didn't get invited, but I'm texting his brother and his dad, and we're not like, best friends. I wouldn't expect that invite.
But does he let you sit in his stall in the Ranger locker room?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I mean that has to say something. So shout out to my boy Colin Wilson, who's getting married this weekend. That'll be a great time in Woodstock, New York.
Oh, that's sick.
So I'll get to see. I have to give a speech on Friday night at the rehearsal. Myself and JVR were speaking on Friday together. And then Shaddy's speaking Saturday at the wedding. We were all going to speak Saturday, but we were like, let's break it up a little bit. Plus, never follow Kevin Shattenkirk because he's so good at public speaking. Rules to live by.
Is Vic going to babysit Sloan this weekend?
That'll be a good time. We'll see. I'll get to see Jonathan Taves, so I'll have to ask him what he's up to. Tyson Barrie will be there, another free agent. There's a couple of good right-handed free agent defensemen at this wedding.
Do some networking there.
So there we'll see if we can't land a couple of good guests for the show later in the summer. But we'll have a player for you next week. Keep an eye on social media. We'll tease it as we get a little bit closer, as we figure out the exact timing of the episode. But Wednesdays at 9 a.m., keep an eye on our show. We'll be back with you 4 days a week next season, 5 days a week next playoffs. We're like 100 days away from training camp. I mean, we're in mid-July basically now. Once July 4th comes, the summer buzzes. So I know you'll be at UMass working a hockey camp next week, right?
Monday and Tuesday I'll be at UMass.
That'll be fun. I'll be actually doing working with the U.S. With the USA Hockey's Atlantic District team next week. They have a training camp. They're getting ready for a bunch of different events. So that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll catch up again next week. And like we said, we'll have a current NHLer for you next week. We'll tease it on social media as we get closer. But stick with us this summer. We're gonna try to make these interview heavy, bring you a little bit of entertainment with guys we can't normally get during the season because of the timing. But stick with us, and thanks to everyone for listening today.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.